So I want to talk about psychological deflection. Deflection is a method of changing the course of an object, an emotion, or thought from its original source. This is one of the most effective tools in the manipulator's arsenal, so you have to watch for it. A person who's highly manipulative, when they're in the hot seat, when they're in a situation where they are being held accountable for their bad behavior, instead of accepting responsibility, they try to find a way to throw mud at you, hoping that something will stick that will take the attention away from them. Do you guys understand that in this situation that occurred with Out the Box a few months ago, if she had simply said, that she was upset, she didn't like that she had been referenced in a person's video, and if she had admitted that, out of anger, that she had given out our phone numbers, I think that everyone involved would have been able to move forward and at least be civil. But what she did is she found ways to try to attach herself to other people who, in my opinion, probably didn't know the full story, probably didn't know the ways that she contributed to the drama. And so various different people supported her until they observed certain things on their own. And even then, everyone has the right to be on YouTube and make a channel as long as they're following community guidelines. So if she come back to YouTube and not continued to lie, I think people could have at least been civil. And indeed, there are spaces that she's able to go into, and it looks like it's no problem. But what she's doing is deflecting. So now she's saying, well, how is Leah divested when she's not in an interracial relationship? What this woman is doing, and this is why the term bitter applies to her, okay? Because what this woman is doing is she's playing on existing points of contention within the BWE space for some women. She's playing on existing divisions, okay? For the Black women who are familiar with divestment, we all know that it's really primarily about being self first. It's about your self-preservation. It's about not sacrificing yourself for anything that is not within your own self-interest. It's about removing yourself away from harmful and toxic people. And it's about understanding that it's not your job and it's really not in your benefit as a Black woman to try to shoulder the burdens of a community that cares nothing about you. Now, there are a lot of married Black women that I know who don't really call themselves divested, okay? But they encourage the single Black women that they know to not limit themselves to one particular pool of men because of what we see happening with the dating and marriage statistics and the fact that there are such high rates of bachelors amongst Black men, okay? So you have a small but growing number of Black women, whether they call themselves divested or not, who are telling younger Black women or maybe their single Black friends that may be in their peer group, they're telling these women, you know what? You may want to expand your dating pool to not just deal with one particular race of men, especially if you're looking for a serious relationship or marriage. You increase your odds by increasing the available pool of men that you're willing to date. you know? So, for example, I know, like, one of my aunts is in an interracial marriage, and she would not identify as divested because she's pretty pro-black. She considers herself to be very much for, the quote-unquote black community. So, I'm sure many of you know this, right? But every black woman in an interracial marriage or relationship may not identify with being divested. Just like every divested black woman may or may not be in an interracial relationship. There are divested black women that don't deal with men at all. Okay? There are divested black women who've come across these spaces who are transgendered, right? And they may have a preference for non-black men or not. So when you make any set of principles or ideas that's supposed to be black woman first and self first, when you take those ideas and you tie them to any group of men, you're taking the focus and the attention away from black women. And the point of divestment is putting that focus back on yourself and on the black women who are like-minded with what we believe being in this space. This particular person has compared me to Phil the Advise Show because she says, well, Phil the Advise Show is pro-black, but he's in an interracial marriage. Here's the thing. That analogy doesn't apply here because I never gave anyone the impression that I was in an interracial relationship or marriage. I've had conversations here and on the live channel, and when the question of my personal life situation comes up, I'm honest and I let people know, yes, I'm a divested black woman and I'm married to a black man. I just understand that my personal life situation is not a reflection on the collective, right? I understand that the black men in my life or in your life, that we know that may not fit into certain stereotypes don't reflect the collective. And don't reflect the collective experiences that black women have when dealing with black men. Also, I haven't been married my whole life, okay? I'm celebrating my 3rd anniversary next week. Prior to meeting my husband, my dating experiences with black men reflected what goes on amongst the collective of black women. Okay? And so the reality is, and if you look at certain statistics, black women, particularly depending on what part of the country you live in, black women get married at older ages than other groups of women. And so there are some things that come with that. If you delay having children until you get married, and you don't get married until 35 or 40 or 45, then there's a real possibility that it won't be easy to have children. And there are younger black women who may make a different choice when it comes to dating and mating if they knew that waiting and holding out would potentially mean that A, they would either never get married, or B, you get married and then fertility is not as easy as it would be if you married before 30 or before 35. So remember how I did an upload earlier today, or if it's after midnight, it was yesterday. But in my upload about old bitter women, I explained that it would be more beneficial to the Black woman collective if there were more Black women who were of a particular age who would look at the path they took and tell younger women, well, maybe these are some things that I would do differently. You know, 25 or 26-year-old Leah probably would not have been the self-sacrificing, believing in Black love Black woman had I known that it would take nearly another 10 years to get married. And you're older, your husband's older, and you're in this place in your life where you can have children, but it's not as easy as it would have been if you were 25 or 26-year-old Leah. Or you're at the place in your life where you can have children, but you don't know if you want to raise children at this point in your life. 25 or 26-year-old Leah maybe would have made some different choices. You know, maybe would have taken certain non-Black men that she came across and dated, maybe would have taken those men more seriously. You know, that's the difference between being a woman who's looking at younger women and saying, well, let me talk to you about my life experiences because hopefully you learn something and you'll do something differently. My life has gone very well and I'm very fortunate and I'm very blessed. But that doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes along the way and that I wouldn't do things differently. You know, there are some women who stay on birth control until they get married, and then you're in your mid-30s. Sometimes you can even be in your early 30s, but you know, you're over 30 and coming off of it, you can experience some complications that you wouldn't have experienced if you had expanded your dating options, perhaps married younger and been in a position to have children younger. So this is why I am a divested Black woman in a marriage with a Black man. And I look at younger divested Black women and I say, you know what? Expanding your options can make a difference in some ways that maybe you wouldn't think about. Is waiting and holding out for the possibility of Black love something that you would do if you knew it would mean you would be like in your mid-50s by the time your children are adults? Raising children and going to soccer practices and stuff in your 40s and 50s. Being a parent for the first time in your late 30s or early 40s. And since you're so old by the time your children are adults, living with the possibility that you may not live long enough to see your grandchildren because you delayed certain things, holding out for something that doesn't come nearly as easily as the Black collective tells you. Okay? So hopefully that answers some questions to the people who are not trolling and to the people who are not emotional manipulators. And I will talk to you all really soon. Bye.